Support for the Pursuit of Music podcast is brought to you by Brooke Mays Music. Brooke Mays Music is a family of retail specialists who unify their professional skills and talents in order to focus on the needs of music education and educators. Their main goal is to increase the number of active instrumental music makers. Their objectives include, number 1, maintain strong working relationships for the lifespan of the music maker's career, and number 2, encourage the love and participation in music, and finally, number 3, their objectives include, number 1, maintain support of music in the schools. The voice of music education drives our actions. Thank you so much to our sponsors, Brooke Mays Music.
As you just heard, two incredible trumpeters are with us today. In fact, these are two folks that Michael and I have had the privilege of playing a gig with. Today we have Garrett Klein and Buddy Deshler of the Dallas Brass. Guys, thanks so much for being with us today. We are, like I said, we are absolutely honored to have you guys with us, and we're excited to hear your story. So, Buddy, Garrett, are you guys there? I see Buddy, I see Garrett. What's up, guys?
Hey guys.
What's up?
Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having us.
So we wanted to feature you guys because you are kind of up and coming musicians and superstars in the music world, and yeah, I know. I said it, so it must be true. and a part of a world famous brass quintet, and we'd love to kind of get an idea of who you are, your background, and how you got to where you are now, what it's like being a part of a touring brass ensemble. So, anyway,
Yeah.
Buddy,
We
you
can
want to start with
definitely-
you?
Sure. So, Buddy Deshler, for those of you that don't know or don't care, but I grew up in Virginia, Fredericksburg, Virginia specifically. The reason I specify is because, there's a lot of history in Fredericksburg, Virginia. But most importantly, Fredericksburg, Virginia is where Chick-fil-A sauce was invented. So that's
Nice.
yes. So we're
Bow
pretty
down.
pretty famous. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Really
No,
important.
That's like a qualifying statement for like any clinic that we do. And every time like I don't mention it, our boss is like, "Why didn't you say the Chick-fil-A thing? People love that." I'm like, okay. So, but yeah, I think just kind of pretty standard, maybe not Texas standard because like Texas standard is like above standard, but
Right.
as far as like growing up musically, so I started when I was 12 in sixth grade at Spotsylvania Middle School, which that's a real place, and then just kept doing casual and normal band activities. So maybe that's not just your concerts, but solo and ensemble and stuff like that. And every time I was chasing that carrot and got there, the person's like, "Oh, well, have you heard about this carrot?" Which would be like joining marching band in high school. And then it'd be like, "Oh, well, if you do well enough in districts, you can do states." Like the whole state, that's a lot of people. And just kept doing that. I started doing music education at George Mason University in Northern Virginia, then made my way to University of Miami in Florida, finished my bachelor's there, did an artist diploma there, did my master's at the Peabody Institute, graduated in May of 2017 with my master's, was rehearsing for Dallas Brass August of 2017.
Wow.
So it was like immediately after, like the timing was pretty serendipitous. And now was touring for 2 years and still touring with the group. But this past year I came back to school to get a doctorate. So now I'm in my DMA studies at Arizona State University. So that's where I'm coming to you from now, 2 hours behind where you are.
Right.
Do
So
you have-
your teachers at I'm sorry. Tell me again where you did your
It's
bachelor's.
super confusing, right? I started it at George Mason University, and
Okay.
then Miami, and then Peabody,
And then Peabody. So who all were your teachers?
my college teachers were Denny Edelbrock, who runs the National Trumpet Competition,
okay.
and then Phil Snedeker for a little bit of my time
Yeah,
at George
absolutely.
Mason, and then Craig Morris at University of Miami, and then Joe Bergstaller and Phil Snedeker and Dave Federley at Peabody. And then I actually came to Arizona State University because Joe Bergstaller got the new job after Dave Hickman retired. So
Yeah.
now I'm back with Joey B. Don't tell him I said
Wow, that's a lot of teachers. Garrett, how about you?
Oh, I'm from a small town in Washington State called Port Orchard, and started band in fifth grade, like you do, and I played in a youth symphony in Tacoma, Washington, and that was kind of where I got more access to like higher level music making, which was pretty important. And I kind of fell in love with the orchestral scene. And then I went to a very small liberal arts school in Minnesota called St. Olaf College, and my teacher there was Marty Hodel. And then I met my wife at St. Olaf, which made the whole price tag worth it, I think.
Nice.
And but it's a school that's just like kind of a diamond in the rough. It's got just these fantastic ensembles and great teachers, and we got to tour a lot every year, and then one international tour to Japan, and so it was a great experience. Very different from like a conservatory or a large university schooling, but don't worry, I went to both other types of schools. I actually lived in Singapore.
I was very worried, so it's good.
Yeah. Well, I said don't. So.
Oh, good now.
After undergrad, I went to live in Singapore, which is my wife Mara. She got a grant to go do research over there, and so I needed to find a way to go there. So I went to a school called the Yangtze Conservatory of Music, and it's a school like Colburn is, where they kind of pay you to go there, which is pretty sweet. So it's a great school, and there's great teachers there. So if anyone's looking for kind of an international experience, that is a fantastic school to go to. They speak English, don't worry. Um, so um, so that was great. That was kind of probably the most interesting thing about my education, was that a year of it was spent abroad, and I got to sub with some orchestras in Singapore and Malaysia, and um, just got exposed to a whole another side of the world and cultures and everything.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people look for whenever they go to schools is just exposure, to professional environments. So I was going to ask you really quickly about how do you St. Olaf? I've never heard of that before. Like, how did you hear about that? Was that like a teacher directed thing or?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny. My brother is a big soccer player, and so he and my dad went out to Minnesota the year before applying for colleges on a soccer tournament, and we had been getting stuff from the mail from St. Olaf, and so my dad just was bored and decided to drive down to Northfield, Minnesota, and checked it out. And it's this really cute, beautiful campus, and then he brought back a whole bunch of CDs and stuff. And the CDs of the orchestra had a trumpet soloist on it, Michael Wilkinson, if you know that name. He's the principal in the Pittsburgh Symphony.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, he's great.
yeah, so he got his start at St. Olaf. I actually basically followed Micah because I went to Arizona State to stay with Dave Hickman, same as him. But yeah, so all of that, and then I got to have a great relationship with my teacher Marty, who's a former member of the Dallas Brass, actually.
Oh wow, that's cool.
Um, anyway, yeah, the Singapore thing was really cool, but I only wanted a year of it because I really wanted to get started on graduate degrees, and so I wanted to do graduate degrees, master's and doctorate at the same school, which was Arizona State. And so I remember calling Professor Hickman on the phone and just asking, if he would allow me to come basically for 5 years, and that's what happened. So Buddy and I kind of traded off after we joined Dallas Brass at the same time. We literally auditioned together.
Wow.
Wow, that's
And
kind of cool.
yeah, they had two spots open, and the auditions were in Minneapolis, and I had just moved back there for my wife got a job in Minnesota, and yeah, it's just I mean like it's all about these coincidences that just keep happening, and that's you just you what's the saying, like there's no such thing as luck, just the like coincidence of preparation, and
Preparation meets opportunity.
yeah, that one.
Is like I would also like to have on the record that I've actually been in Dallas Brass 13 hours longer than Garrett has.
There you go.
Because it was a 2-day audition and a very late phone call I received asking if I wanted to have one of the spots, and then I said yes, and they were like, "Do you want to think about it some?" And I said no. And then they were like, okay, so here's the thing. We have two people that we're, deciding between. We kind of have an idea of who we want, but we want you to play with both of them to see how you guys interact together and, also who you like. So then we came back the next day and it was one person and then it was Garrett. And it was immediately Garrett. It sounds like sort of like a bachelor type
The match
show.
made in
But,
heaven.
yeah, but
You handed him a rose.
it
Yeah.
was
First impression rose.
I kind of like over fantasize like the story a little bit, but basically when we're playing stuff together, there's a lot of two trumpets in a brass quintet in general. That's an important thing, but especially in Dallas Brass, there's so much interplay happening and a lot of transferring of parts and stuff like that. So we auditioned with a couple of things like William Tell, which we heard, and Neapolitan dance, which goes back and forth as a trumpet thing that we do in clinics. And then the first time someone is playing the Neapolitan solo, it then goes to the other trumpet. And I remember I was playing at first, and then like I looked over, I'm like, okay, it's your turn, and Garrett was like already like looking like right at me. He's like, I'm ready. Like so I already knew like this guy like knows. He's not like he's just already there. So he's super connected to it. And yeah, so what we did, we auditioned at the exact same time, which was a really cool experience.
That is cool.
It also has made it like interesting with the group, and like the way that I'm glad it happened, where a lot of the time, especially with a group like Dallas Brass, where like the show is kind of like, this is what our show is, and we put some new things in here and there, and we change some stuff, and especially with new members, but more or less like this is the show that you're walking into, this is the legacy, this is the group you're walking into. So if there's already a trumpet player there and then a new one comes in, it's kind of like, okay, this is what I play, here's all the other parts. But when Garrett and I, they were just like, you figure it out, like whatever you guys want to do. So like from like the very first second, there was just like no ego, because we were both like, we need to get through this. This is like a 2+ hour show. All this music, most of it's memorized. Neither of us can look bad, and and everything was new. So we were like immediately like, okay, you sound good when you do this, so you should play first on this. And it's like, and like, yeah, that makes sense. And then that way you can play first on this because I just did this, and plus you sound great. So there was this like really great relationship immediately to make sure that we were both successful and playing to each other's strengths. And it's kind of been that way for going on 3 years.
That's so important, you know. I mean, with chamber music, and I helped kind of set up a brass group that's here in the Dallas area. Not Dallas Brass, but obviously
Dallas Brass with 3 S's.
That's a different Michael.
To avoid
copyright law.
It's a group that I'm not a part of anymore, but I kind of helped started create the business side of it. But you know, as a part of doing that, you know, we did auditions, and you know, picking someone for a chamber group is different because you spend a lot of time together, a lot of real personal time, and man, you can't just get the best player. You've got to get like someone you enjoy being around, which is a big deal. So that's really cool. You guys are able to do it.
I think that's why I'm here. So like what I lack in skill, I provide with comic relief. So it's like happy to be around. So we all have our place, and I'm aware of it.
That's good. Well, so you guys you're going on tour, or you were going on tour before the virus hit, I assume. I assume that kind of made things a little bit more not toury. But so what has that life been like? And you know, how many concerts do you do? And you know, where have all of you been? What have you done?
Well, Dallas Brass used to be a full-time job back even probably less than 10 years ago. The guys, Paul and Juan, who are still in the group, they would be going into their 10th season. They talk about the days where they were on the road for like 150 days a year, playing 120 concerts. Yeah, so full-time job. You could pick up some freelance gigs and teaching when you were home, but pretty much your life was on the road. It's not that way now. Pretty much all of us have either school or teaching that we come home to. That is like our main kind of daily thing. So I'd say we average about like 40 to 50 days out on the road per season. And most of that's during the kind of the academic year because we're so heavily involved in schools. So, I mean, but when we're on the road, it's maybe like max like a 10-day stretch. And so, you know, those of us who teach we're able to be away from our students that long, and we each have kind of creative ways about how to stay in touch. But while we're on the road, it's fun. It's so much fun, and I miss
believable. It. That was
almost
Do you guys ride around in a Prius, or what's your tour van?
So one thing to come back to is that that Dallas Brass used to have like a bus, like a Dallas Brass bus, which apparently was in like decked out. And by decked out, I think I kind of mean like lipstick on a pig sort of thing. But that's where they used to go with everything was in the Dallas Brass bus. But what we do is we all fly into the same city. That's sort of like the center point of what our tour might be. So like one of the last tours we did, was in Minnesota, but that was a little bit longer. That was like 13 days, and we all flew into Minneapolis, and then we went all around. We went to Duluth. We went to a lot of places outside, but we'll fly in, then we'll rent cars, and then we'll go. So we'll rent like 3 cars because there's like 7 of us, plus a tuba, so like 7.5.
Right. Yeah.
And and then we just like each stop we go along. It's kind of like who's riding with who, and it's basically like who doesn't want to be in the car where I'm driving. It's sort of like what it turns into sometimes.
There's definitely a hierarchy of driving capabilities in Dallas Brass.
I agree with most of Garrett's list because I think Garrett's the best driver in the group. I think he thinks I'm the worst driver.
I don't think that at all.
Oh, okay, good. Then I definitely agree with Garrett's list. If I'm rocking at 5 or 6, I'll take it. That's fine. As long as I'm not 7. So, but with what Garrett was saying is like, even if our tours are shorter or we're not on the road as much, it's just like bang, 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 bang every time we're out. So we're doing a concert, and everything is like clinic, rehearsal, sound check, concert, all in the same day, and then go to sleep. Or maybe there's some things we do before we go to sleep. We might eat something, we might drink something, but then we'll go to sleep, and then
you say might. You say that's definitely part of the daily schedule.
It is, and then we're off to a new town, and it could be an hour away, it could be 5 hours away, and then we kind of base it that way. So it's sort of like after we daily routine, eat something, drink something, we'll say like what time, like first car is leaving at this time. And then the first car is basically like, do you want to get there to warm up better than everybody else before the first clinic? So it's like first van's rolling out at like 7:30, and it's kind of like, who wants to leave at like 8:15? I will. And it's like, cool.
So whoever's in college and thinking that it ever ends, like, who do I want to sign up for an 8 a.m. or a 9 a.m.? Yeah, it never stops. So it never stops.
Kind of, but kind of what Garrett was also talking about as far as like the teaching load and everything too is like there is like a checks and balances sort of thing. So sometimes Garrett's like, I have a bunch of emails I need to send for school, so I will drive tomorrow or something like that, but someone else drive today? So that way everyone is still kind of taking care of things back home in their downtime or whatever downtime we can afford. Since most of it is we're in a school, just for a day, so we're trying to like give 1,000% to the kids and to the program that we're there for. So no one is sort of like checked out in that regard.
So when you guys go to schools, or when you put on clinics, is this mostly for chamber ensembles, or do you work with kids who want to play solos for you, or how does your master class look?
It's different based on the type of school we're at. Like sometimes we're at a college or university, and so we'll do chamber music clinics, and then occasionally break out into like instrument master classes. But typically we do like we'll have elementary school through high school age students all come into an assembly time, and so we'll open up with a tune and then kind of introduce ourselves and play a couple more tunes, and then we have students come up on stage and play some chamber music stuff that they've kind of been working on ahead of time. And so we'll kind of be around helping them, helping just to facilitate that. But typically it's mostly it's mostly just a chance for them to meet us and hear us play a little bit more. And then it's pretty crazy. I mean, consistently, like we'll walk in and we'll be introduced. It's the Dallas Brass, and we play something, and people are like, "Whoa, cool!" And then by the end of the night, after we've played our concerts, like people are just like screaming. Like I don't mean to like toot our own horns, but like sometimes the applause at the concerts is deafening.
Derry, New Hampshire was like deafening. I like remember it was like Pinkerton Academy. It was just like people lost it. It was awesome.
That's funny.
Freaking lost it. It was great.
Well, really quickly, I appreciate you guys using our city to rep your awesome playing skills. We're getting that free tip there. So
yeah, that's something that I'll point out that we're not ashamed of, but Dallas Brass currently has pretty much zero connections to the city of Dallas. Other than that, we love it, and the group started there. So Mike Levine, who we reference as our boss, or Hefe, as Juan calls him, we Mike moved from Minneapolis to Dallas like almost 40 years ago and started the group as basically a gig quintet with people that he knew at SMU and UNT. And just like, you know, anybody else out there who starts a chamber music group in college, it's kind of started that way, playing weddings and background music. And then Mike just kind of had this moment where he realized, you know, I don't want to be background music anymore. So he like crafted this show and hired an agent to help them book, you know, more high profile gigs. And, you know, in not too many years, they were touring internationally and playing for presidents and all this stuff that Dallas Brass is known for, recording a bunch of great albums. And so Buddy and I are just kind of enjoying all the hard work that was done at the beginning to get the name of the group out there. But I think that it's a great group to be part of because it's so heavily influenced by education. And I would say that's our focus now. I mean, the group hasn't released an album in, I don't know, almost 10 years. We're hoping to, but especially with this time, the finances have to be there. But regardless of that, like, we're still going on the road and being an educational model and resource for young students. And that's why I love being in the bands. Not only is the quality of music exceptionally high, but we get to make a really visceral difference for young students. And that's, I mean, nothing is better than that.
So I guess that brings up an interesting, I'm not going to say issue, but an interesting change. You know, the music field is changing so rapidly with, you know, with streaming concerts I mean, everything's different. There used to be a day where, you know, pop artists could record an album and then they were good to go. I mean, they could make their millions selling it and then they could just live the high life. That's not happening anymore. And I think all of us, even in the classical field, we're seeing that difference. And what kinds of things are you guys talking about or doing to address that? Or is that, I assume that's come up, right?
In kind of has come up, but also it kind of hasn't, because it's just been ingrained in the model and the personality of the members of the group and in the mission of the group. So I think one of the things you're alluding to, Michael, is like interactive performances and like engaging with audiences. So rather than it being like, this is the group, this is the stage, this is where we are. If you like this and you like it more, these are albums and you can like listen to it whenever you want. But, you know, Dallas Brass's mission is immediately connecting on all levels. So when we do that, not just like, oh yeah, this is a school, sure, we'll do a clinic, but like actually, you know, getting a chance to like really know the students, trying to have them get to know us as much as we can, and then doing it throughout the show. Mike MCs the show. We don't have people that go up and like introduce pieces. We have someone that MCs the show and is like connecting with audiences and is bringing them in, that's asking questions, that's making jokes, waiting for responses. So like it is a show, but kind of like how a lot of shows are, and comedians, like they read the room, they see what things land, they like wait for certain reactions from people and stuff like that. So as far as like the game changing with like people not just being able to make a bunch of money off of CDs and streaming things, this is about bringing connection and interaction and engagement from performer to not even just audience but community. So it could be like the entire school, it could be the surrounding areas. One of my favorite things about Dallas Brass is that all of our shows are not Chicago, LA, New York, Milan, you know, but it's
Right.
A lot of small town America, all around. I think it's funny, like we were talking about a couple of things we've done in Kansas, and it's like these like, you know, smaller towns in Kansas, and Juan and Paul have played in like 25, 30 cities in Kansas alone. So
Wow.
like they know Kansas, and it's like I'd ask you to name 10 cities in Kansas right now or something like that. But like we've played everywhere. We play in all these places because there's music everywhere. there's students everywhere, and there's opportunity for education connection everywhere. So it hasn't really been part of the conversation because it's kind of like what we've
Just what
been
you
doing
do.
and want to do. Yeah.
And I think that there's, after the coronavirus pandemic is behind us, hopefully sooner than later, I think there'll be more of an appetite for that style of musical
Oh, yeah.
interaction.
Agreed, 100%.
I hope. I mean, maybe I'm just like being naive and optimistic, but I've been creating a bunch of video content for students and obviously teaching online lessons, and that only carries kind of so much of a weight, and it's a live concert, but a live concert that's so impactful is something that we and other groups like us can bring. And so I'm hopeful that when we are all back in concert halls, we'll still be out there doing our thing.
Yeah. Garrett, I think we lost your video there, but can you guys see Garrett, or is it just me?
It's frozen picture-wise, but the audio and the message is
And the
The
message,
message is crystal
the
clear.
message is true. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but we
Um,
are frozen video-wise for Gare Bear.
Care Bear.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, I'd love to hear. I mean, do you guys have any crazy stories from the road?
Hopefully Gare's coming back on. So
Yeah.
with one of the things that we love is when we go to a place where like previous Dallas Brass members have, like they are now. So when we went to Florida and went to Boca Raton, we met up with Dan Satterwhite, who used to play in the group too, and he was there during like old school Dallas Brass days, where there was like a lot more, because we're safe and protected in so many ways. Like we don't use physical maps to get from city to city. We're able to look on our GPS to like immediately know how long it's going to take to get there, if there's traffic, and how many Starbucks we pass on the way. So like, it's so easy for us now. So like there aren't as many opportunities for disaster unless we go out looking for it. Now that's not saying that sometimes we don't know. But so there, I think like when people ask us, because they're like, oh, like you guys are like, rock stars, like bands like traveling and touring, and it's just like we're a brass group, like to a degree, like we're only like gonna get into a certain echelon of Guns N' Roses status. So we're not. But I do remember. I'm trying.
However, what was it? New Hampshire, where they went crazy.
Yeah.
That was like Guns N' Roses status, right?
Yeah, but that's like New Hampshire crazy. So like
okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No.
Also, elementary and middle schoolers aren't going gaga for Guns N' Roses concert.
Right.
Kind of a real quick thing, and then we'll get to any sort of fun stories that we can think of. But what talking about like elementary schoolers. So mainly when we're doing concerts and clinics and stuff, it is like middle school, high school. Occasionally we will do whole schools or something like that. And I remember we were in Dothan, Alabama, and recently, like this past season, and we did like this thing, and it was elementary school through high school, and then like parents and band teachers and all. It was like this big conglomerate. And I don't know, Garrett, how many people do you think were there? Like over 1,000.
I'd say 2,000 probably.
I think like
it was in like a big stadium sort of setup.
Wow.
Yeah. So 2,000 matured symphony goers is very different than 2,000 elementary through high school. So that's like 8,000 at least, and they're just like losing it for like everything. And there's like so much screaming. And Mike is like awesome with kids, and he knows like exactly. So they'll like scream, and then he's the person to be like, I can't hear them. Can you hear them, guys? And then they're just like, you don't challenge kids to scream louder, but we do. So it's so much fun just to have like that kind of energy and stuff. And then it's so awesome to give that back too. As far as stories, Garrett, can you think of anything? I'm only thinking of Florida.
Florida, where we slept in the airport.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully it's hard. I mean, if you ask the other members of the group, they'd be able to come up with some better stories. Driving in rental cars, sometimes we need to drive faster than is legally allowed to make a flight or to get to a clinic,
Oh,
that sort of thing.
weren't you in the car when Ryan didn't get pulled over, but that other person did?
Yeah,
You want to tell that story real quick?
yeah, so we were in Williamsport, Pennsylvania,
That's right.
which is a cute little town, and flying out of Harrisburg in the afternoon, and the guys wanted to go bowling while we had some free time to kill.
Yeah.
And so
As one does.
the bowling game, took a little longer than was expected. And then they went for another round after that. And so I'm looking at the clock and it's just like, oh my God, we need to get to this airport. Like, it was like a small Harrisburg airport. So we finally hop in the cars, and GPS is telling us one thing, and Ryan, who's driving, is saying like, I'm going to shave 10 minutes off of that. And
Oh, never trust that.
yeah.
Always fun to
So
hear.
we're cooking, and we're driving in the left lane, going plenty fast, and there's I'm in the back seat, and I look up ahead, and there's a cop sticking his nose out, ready to catch people, and so I'm like, Ryan, cop, and so he like slams on the brakes and gets in the right lane, which is not what you're supposed to do, and and so sure enough, the cop pulls out and is coming to get us, and it drives right past us. And so we're driving like a Hyundai Elantra or something, and the cop goes behind another Hyundai Elantra, same color, same year of car,
Oh my God.
and pulls that car over for speeding. They were going like, exactly the same. So meanwhile, we're just like going on by.
So if the owner of a Hyundai Elantra
Yeah,
going in Williamsport to Harrisburg is watching right now, we're very sorry.
That's absolutely us.
We're very sorry. So I'll tell the Florida story. It's not like too bad, but basically, when you're touring, and Michael, you were talking about doing like business related things, too, like we want to play chamber music, and like we just want to be artists and musicians, but there is tons of behind the scenes stuff that comes into play with these things. And a lot of that is like, okay, we need to like rent cars, we need to book hotels, we need to do these kind of things. So we were doing this pretty long tour in Florida, but we were in like Delray Beach, Florida, and like really like some nice areas. And Juan's job at this time, and in addition to not cracking notes, was to book hotels and flights and stuff like that. If like the group is being paid X amount of dollars, of course we're gonna like, okay, like how much money can we save on rental cars? How much money can we save on hotels? Things like that. So Juan is always like looking for better deals, and is this hotel on the way to where we're going? Are we going backwards? So there's decisions to be made, and we were supposed to get a hotel rooms our last night of tour before flying out, and he kept kind of pushing it off because they were really expensive. And then we were finally on the night of our concert, like the last day, we still didn't have hotel rooms. And then he like tried calling. He's like, okay, I found a place. And then this was like where like a big NASCAR race was happening. So like every hotel was like getting like slammed and booked and everything.
Yeah.
So we're backstage like before like in intermission or something like that, and Juan's like on his phone like looking at hotels for us like in like 2 hours to go. So it got to the point where like we just couldn't find anything. Mike was staying with a friend. Juan and our drummer who was playing that tour, Neil, lived in Florida, so they were gone. They were just going to go home. Paul and Ryan were able to stay with another like guest and friend of Mike's and of the groups. So that just left Garrett and I with nowhere to go.
Oh, no.
So we were like, I guess we're going to spend the night in the airport. Now, rather than just go to the airport right after the concert, we're like, Juan felt bad and our drummer felt bad, so they just hung out with us all night. So we went to the airport at like 3 or something, like 3 in the morning. We found like at like an arcade type place, and we were just like playing games and hanging out and eating late. And so we went there, and then we came to the airport. We slept for like, I don't know, an hour maybe.
And
then
slept is exaggerating probably.
Yes. So and we found it where it was like a little bench, and then Garrett slept there, and then I slept like underneath it. So it was like bunk bed status.
And we had our trumpets and stuff like hooked around our arms, and
yeah, like we have 8 trumpets between us. So like, what are we gonna do? Just be like fall asleep at an airport at like 3 a.m? Like, no way. So we're like, wrapping it around and stuff like that. And then we came. Yeah, so other than like just like a lot of close calls to airports, I think that's kind of the extent of our bad boy days.
Sounds like good bonding time.
Right.
Michael, we've never slept bunk beds before.
That's true. I guess something to check off the list, I guess.
Yeah, more room for activities that way.
It is amazing the stories that come up in these gigs, and I remember, especially in college, I just had just one after the other, and there were just crazy stories. Whether it was playing a wedding in a field with bugs landing all over me, or bridezilla issues and being bumped, by playing in a prelude, or it's funny. So, well, cool. So, getting into Dallas Brass a little bit, I wanted to just touch on what you all do. One of the things that Ben and I were mesmerized by was the show that you all put on in December. And I know, and I think I speak for Ben too, but I look at not just, how you guys play, and that was fantastic, but also how do you connect with the audience? And I'd love to get, and I know you said that you work on connecting with the audience, but what kind of rehearsing is there with that? I mean, how do you, when you came into the group, how did you learn to do that with the audience? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it does. And I have some things. That's why I smiled. But Garrett, if you wanna start.
Well, I think for a lot of us who are fresh out of school and have kind of been hiding in the back of large ensembles for most of our time, it's a steep learning curve, and there's a lot of kind of discomfort in connecting with the audience. And one of the things that if anyone's played a piece from memory, you kind of realize you don't know where to look. And so there's a couple options that you have. You can close your eyes. You can like look at the back of the hall. You can like look down, and so we're all about like looking at specific, audience members, not looking over them, not looking, like all of us are guilty of kind of looking in like no man's land, like at the edge of the stage, maybe past our bells. And so basically we're trying to either look at each other or the audience. And,
right.
That little, eye contact goes a long way. We're also always kind of tweaking kind of the bits that we have in the show based on audience reactions. And like Buddy mentioned earlier, you have to see if it lands. And so we have to know who our audience is, if they're mostly kids or mostly older folks. And there's a lot to go into it, but it's really something that if there are younger musicians watching that are playing in a chamber group that want to try it out, pick one of your pieces to memorize and play it for friends maybe to start with, and see if you can maintain eye contact with just your friends. And it's like I said, it's uncomfortable, but it has a big effect.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. The eye contact thing is huge. I remember, so Buddy, you were telling this story when in the audition, when you looked over and Garrett was looking at you in the eyes. I was like, yes, more about this eye contact talk. Let's talk about this. So,
for sure. Well, it's also like there's a big difference also between like looking at someone and looking through someone. So if you're just like staring because it's like I'm supposed to be looking at someone, but you are still just like fixated on everything that's playing here, then that's when we get into the idea of like how genuine you are as a person and as a player and musically too. So that's like another thing. The reason I smiled when you asked about that is, one of the many things about Mike Levine that like no one can really touch is how detailed he is about the little things that make a performance spectacular. And so we would do a show, and after a show, this is in Garrett and I's first year, Mike's like, can I meet with you guys to go over just some notes on like the show? And to be one thing, it's kind of like this part was too loud, or like, check intonation here in this thing. But it was just like, you step weird here, or like you're walking at a different pace than Garrett is, or
Wow.
like all these like super little things. And it would be like flip page from one show. And then we would do another show that night trying to remember everything. And then the next day, can I meet with you guys to go over some of everything, of all these little things?
How did he do that when he's emceeing the concert? I mean, I don't.
Because he videotapes the concerts, and so he'll stay up late after the show and for our benefit get us notes for the next one, and we'll have 12 hours to process. And I mean, he's extremely reasonable, so he doesn't expect everything to be fixed. It's just like that consistent reminder. And like, this is obviously, I mean, for Buddy and I and anybody who's been in Dallas Brass and gotten these notes, like it's something that you don't get. Your orchestra conductor doesn't pull you aside after rehearsals and be like, yeah, you're looking at me weird here, don't do that.
It'd be amazing if they were like, you were looking at me.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I was surprised to see.
So we're all kind of just doing our best out there, and I think first and foremost the quality of playing comes through, and the notes aren't about playing typically, because we all have ears and we're pro musicians, so like we can figure that out, and then we talk about that in group rehearsals. But the visual aspect and just having those detailed notes come, and then we can confirm them when we go back and watch the video footage, and we're like, yep, I look real awkward there. But it's like, it's all kind of on this mission to just help us connect with the audience better. It's not about like making us look cooler, which is that's an uphill battle for me personally.
I think the two biggest comments for Garrett and I, like Garrett was just like, would be like, you look too stiff. And then when I would do something, it'd be like, you're trying too hard. So like, I would just be like over the top about it. So like, that's usually our, like, we have to come together in the middle. And the thing is, it also comes into, it's those things that people pick up on without realizing it. So it might be like if the horn is playing something and then the trombone takes over or joins them, it's like, why don't you step up with them? Like, horn step out if like there's the melody, and then it's like, oh, when trombone joins, like, join them. Like, that's what's happening musically. This could also happen visually too. And then, like, there's a couple of acrobatic things, because I don't think when we were in Texas we did You and I, which is the trumpet feature. I don't know, do you guys remember that?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Usually people do. Garrett and I do because we have to practice it. But there's one part in it where we have like a main theme, and it's kind of like a cornet type theme. And at the end, Garrett and I play the themes on each other's fingers. So like we're like swapped hands. I
think I remember you all doing something like that. It may not have been that piece, but
yeah. So like I'm doing the fingerings for Garrett's horn. Garrett is doing the fingerings backwards for my horn. And when we knew we had to do that coming into the group, we were like, okay, well, we can't practice this until we're like together, like before our first tour. So we're like kind of practicing it, and then like we're practicing all this stuff, like, okay, let's practice this. And it was just, it just like didn't work at all. And we were like, we might have to tell Mike we can't do it, because we were just like, how are we going to learn how to do this? Yeah. And then we finally started getting it, and it was like, okay, this is cool. And then I don't know if you remember this, Garrett, but like our very first show was in Bram, Minnesota, in a gymnasium. And also it's like a trumpet feature in general, but also we're like up front, everyone's in the back, we're like right in the center, and we do that. And then we were doing it, and then we just messed up, like, and it was just like, and then we just looked at each other, and together we were like, almost. We just finished the tune, and that's kind of like our safety. Kind of like if for some reason it like happens. But you know, before a show, everyone's warming up and everything, and this tune is in the first half. So then I'll just I'll like call Garrett, or he'll call me, and we'll just go like, or like go like this, and it's like that means let's practice that real quick. And so we'll do that. We'll do that with William Tell. We'll do like a couple of things before that, but it's all these other things that come into a performance. And when you think about taking away the chairs, the stands, the book, and then you don't have that and you do it from memory, yeah, like Garrett was saying, it's like, well, what do I do? It's like Ricky Bobby, like, what do I do with my hands? Like, it's one of those things, like, what do I do with my eyes? Like, where do I go? So, and it makes it super easy when like you just get along with everybody in the group too.
Right.
Yeah. The thing that I was amazed by, and this is just one last comment that we probably should move on to a little bit. I've got a couple pedagogical questions for you guys. But the end of your show, you had it so that you left the stage and you went to the lobby. And I think I even said to Ben, look at that. That is incredible. They have it worked out so they're actually going to the lobby. You're ready for the audience. And then I went out there and saw you guys, and you were positioned in different parts, not together at all. And it was this perfect spread so that people could go to whatever musician they wanted to. And I don't know this for sure, but my assumption is that is absolutely planned that way.
The fact that we do it, yeah, as far as like particular locations, no, but like before, like during intermission, before we go on, we say like, do you have your Sharpie? You know, to sign anything, to sign autographs, so we have it there. So that way, when we do the show, it's just like boom, lobby. So like when we're taking our bows to, like maybe at intermission, we're like bow. It's like off to the left, okay, to the left, and that way everyone is this. So it's not like this. Oh, and then you go. So
right.
And then after the show, like at the last piece, it's like to the lobby, go, lobby. And it is that because we're there to greet our audience, we're there to send them off, we're there to connect, we're there to talk, and we're there to to be there. So yeah, definitely planned. Well,
so I'd love to ask you guys, and we'll probably want to wrap in the next 10 minutes or so, but you know, with this virus that we're dealing with, you know, I think that, and I can't remember, one of you guys said that before when we were talking before, that probably chamber music is going to play a much bigger role this next year because we just need smaller groups together. What kind of advice or tips do you have for students that are wanting to get more involved with that? Should they get more involved with it? Should they be excited about it? Is it boring? Is it, you know, what do you think?
I think the benefits of chamber music are limitless. And I think one of the obvious and big ones is that you get more exposure being just one on a part, and so you have to have more accountability. And so hopefully students will learn that if they show up to a rehearsal, like they can't hide behind the first chair player. And but I think it's fun too, because it's like you're it. It's like, you know, look at me, I'm doing my thing, rather than look at 10 trumpet players in the band. So, and you know, for younger students, that if parents get to go to concerts, like that's going to be exciting for them. It's just going to be a great thing. And then at the university level to the professional level, I think it'll tie into what you were just talking about, Michael, with audience like interactions, like breaking down that barrier from the stage to the audience. And I think that's one of the greatest things about chamber music is you get to see, even if it's a string quartet, you get to see the players' personalities come alive more, just because there's less to look at. Like if you watch a full orchestra doing Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, there's a lot to look at, but you don't, and a lot to hear, but you don't get to know personalities at all. So
Right.
I think and especially as audiences kind of, there's a lot of free content for people out there right now online, and so a lot of people argue like, well, we can't be giving that away. But I think when we come back, it's just going to be this reaffirmation of the fact that live performances can't be duplicated. The feeling that you get when you leave the concert hall, and I think that's going to be doubled if you have more chamber music out there rather than full orchestral choral band stuff.
Totally. I also
Yeah.
think there's an opportunity for everybody to embrace and rise to the occasion of what chamber music develops. So rather than, like, if you were to just even take intonation, for example, and it's kind of like if you're in a band and it's like, can I contribute without worsening this B flat across the entire ensemble? Two, big breath and exist. And then you just exist in this big wall of sound of a concert B flat. Maybe it gets to the mature point of, okay, trumpets, let me hear you. And then you just fit into that. But it's kind of like, now you're playing with just horn. Or like now you're playing with, that's the other thing. It's like, yes, we're in a professional brass chamber group. But it's kind of like, oh yeah, I love chamber music. Oh, what kind of chamber music? It's like, oh, brass quintet, brass quartets, brass trios, sometimes brass duets. But like, it's like, well, what if you're playing with a clarinet and then like a flute and like things like that? So just intonation there, balance, not just in your idiomatic family of brass or trumpets or horn or whatever, but across. And then all the stuff that Garrett was talking about preparation and expression and personality that you bring.
Yeah. And when we get back into the orchestra or the bands, like, we're going to bring those same listening skills back. You're going to hear the clarinets for the first time. Like, you're going to get outside of your section and open up your ears. And that's what people tout about chamber music. It's this opportunity to hear all levels, melody, rhythm, harmony, all that stuff, rather than just like, I hope I don't miss this note.
Yeah. I talk and teach about like 4 levels of listening. The first is you're listening to just yourself, and then you're listening to your instrument, so trumpets, flutes, clarinet, saxophone, whatever. Then listening for your family, brass family, woodwind family, percussion, whatever it may be, and then the ensemble. So it's like your ears are stretching across all of that.
So I've got a quick question for you guys, because I absolutely agree with everything that you're saying. I know in the Texas band world, it is absolutely it's almost like a thing where we don't even talk about chamber music. We're so ensconced in the UIL, let's get a gold medal, let's do marching band, the most intense, 12 hours a day of marching band and then 12 hours a day of UIL. So I don't know if it was different for you guys, but for me, it was like, sure, you can play in a brass quintet if you want, but have fun doing it on Sunday mornings at your buddy's house, because you're not going to be able to do it anytime in band world. So I didn't even know who Victor Awald was until I got to college, which now that I'm in love with the Awald quintets, it's like, that's mind boggling to me. So was that different for you guys in your respective areas of growing up, or was it something that the schools encouraged? And I also know Michael Levine's trying to do that as well, to encourage chamber ensembles with his organization. So I'm just curious how it was for you guys growing up.
Well, the first thing is, nothing is like Texas. No, nowhere. So, like, if you're gonna ask if we've had the same experience, like, no, I'm over here at Hardee's, you're at Whataburger. Like, it's like we're different. We're in different worlds for everything. But jokes aside, it seems like Garrett was gonna say something.
Well, I just think I personally craved chamber music because I got to kind of pick to play with my friends who were great players, and but I don't think that, we go all over the country, and I've been in a lot of public school band programs, and there's no infrastructure for chamber music, and I think that's why a lot of people shy away from it, honestly. Like, just not having the room or the budget for the music, or trusting students to be unsupervised and actually rehearsing. Like, there's any band director will point out those pretty obvious things, but I think that we're in a time right now where we're rethinking everything. And I think that the large ensemble isn't safe for this fall. Like, I mean, unless some miracle happens, but so I think that everybody out there who is kind of pushing back on chamber music has to rethink it and hopefully be creative and innovative in making that happen. But there's a lot of great resources out there. I hope that a lot of composers and arrangers are going to get more work, because there's going to be more demand for new pieces that might fit kind of a strange instrumentation. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what people are already kind of calling the year of chamber music. And
Yeah,
you know,
that sounds. I mean, dude, it sounds like a great way to develop just the ensemble skills that we've been talking about for the past hour or so. So, I want to give you guys one opportunity to just give out a final message, a final thought. Maybe to we have a lot of aspiring want to be professional educators and professional teachers, and you guys are the models. You know, you guys are doing what you love for a living. So, do you have any final thoughts for them? Maybe a good message for them to hear.
I think for me, whenever we were like in our current state and we see somebody else that's like a professional, like that's like our mentor or role model or our heroes or whatever, the big question we ask is like, what do you do or what did you do that got you to there? And like, I want to know like this secret. And there are certain kind of uniform things and traditional things that it's like, well, I practice or like I focus on these things, but like literally like no one's path is the same. Like, there's always going to be certain other variables. We all have different adversities, that we're overcoming, to do that. So I guess my very simple advice is just to keep moving forward, because I listened to, and I told this to Mike many times, is that I was like, I listened to Dallas Brass 2 from 1989 CD because my high school band director gave it to me my senior year of high school. Never did I think that I would play in this group. But through all these other series of events, I'm here. And I might be somewhere doing all these other things a year from now. Not saying I'm leaving the group, but I'm saying that like a lot of other opportunities might come from it, just from like daily actions, daily beliefs, and moving forward. And while we can do particular things that might put us on like more of a trajectory for it, it's like I'm going to focus on excerpts because I want to be an orchestral musician, or I'm going to really study scores because I want to be a conductor or something like that. Those do make sense, but it's not a super guarantee all the time. And also like all these other skills that I've done, starting chamber groups from scratch in high school, wanting to kind of just like entertain people, a lot of that just kind of morphed into me doing Dallas Brass, so it made it like a good fit and stuff. So the simple advice is just to keep moving forward, to embrace opportunities, and then to just try to be learning all the time. I think that's my overly vague and simple advice for now.
Sage. Yeah.
So I teach college. I teach at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and I talk with my students all the time about how we need to be entrepreneurial and we need to be innovative. And Buddy has a great series called The Entrepreneurial Student that he gives, and we had Buddy as a Zoom guest earlier this spring to talk about that stuff. And but we all go to college with kind of like we have a major, and there's kind of implications to that major. So if I choose trumpet performance, I might think, well, okay, I'm gonna gun for like a military band job or an orchestral job, and that's kind of the default. But I think right now is the time to change that default into being like, if you're majoring in music as a performance major, you need to basically be majoring in entrepreneurship rather than I'm going to try to fit into this mold, because those molds are becoming fewer and fewer. And who knows what, this year of financial devastation is going to do for those orchestras. So it has to be a change in our in our mind about what a career in music looks like. And so, like Buddy said, you have to move forward. You have to take every opportunity that comes to you, and you can't kind of pigeonhole yourself into saying, like, I hate it when people like identify themselves as a classical trumpet player or an orchestral trumpet player, or I'm just a jazz trumpet player. Like that's so limiting. And if you announce that to people, then they're not going to hire you because they have this image of what they want. So I just think that we need to be creative, entrepreneurial, innovative, and make sure that you kind of idolize people who've already done that to get ideas.
Yeah. Well, guys, I can't thank you enough for your time. And, we really appreciate you guys coming on the podcast and sitting down and talking with us. I know I'm a trombone player, but my students love listening to podcasts like this just as much as I'm sure trumpet players, horn players, all musicians should enjoy talks like this because we're all in this big kind of musical boat together. So, again, thank you guys for coming on. And we look forward to talking to you soon and hopefully playing with you guys again. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Please reach out. To Garrett and I, we're very accessible online on our websites and on Facebook and on social media and stuff like that. So this has been really great for us too. So we hope to, continue connecting and talking with you and your audiences.
Awesome.
Thanks.
We appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right.